it's truly an honor to be invited to come speak with you all. It has been a doozy of a day. I am just so grateful that y'all are here, showing up in person for us to have this conversation about a topic that is super important to me, and I believe is even more important in light of current events. So thank you for being here, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you all. Because I'm really passionate about this topic, I could go on, so Sydney, would you please make sure that when we have about 20 minutes left, I want to make sure that we have transitioned to the worksheet that y'all picked up coming in here in order to make sure that you get the most out of your time with me tonight. A little bit about my background to kick things off so you know who's standing up here talking to you. I am a full-time MBA grad at the Macomb School, so welcome. Proud alumni. After business school, I went into the tech industry. I worked for a number of years, both at a startup and in the big corporate tech world. Got lots of experience there under my belt. And over the past couple of years, I have been on a journey of personal finance development. I have become a facilitator for an organization called Invest for Better that really equips women to align their investments with their values, which is something I'm excited to incorporate into our talk tonight. And this fall, in August officially, I took the lead to leave my corporate job and fully lean into the entrepreneurial endeavor, like many of y'all, by founding an organization called Savvy Investor, which is focused on educational opportunities and community building for women to build their wealth. When I was growing up, probably about 7 years old, I remember being exposed to the idea of budgeting with the envelope method. This worked really well back in, the last century when we actually used money, physical currency that could be divided into different envelopes and budgeted out. That really gave me a foundation for understanding where the heck my money was going, even today. I was very fortunate to grow up in a family that did talk about money, and I started investing at a pretty early age. I vividly remember selecting my first stocks in college, one of which was Avon makeup. That tanked horribly. It is one of my worst investments to date, and I lead with that to break the ice a little bit and share that this is not about being perfect or having the right answers right off the bat, but much more about learning as you go. I'm very thankful for the people who influenced my money perspective in my life. It did start with my family, but I know that that is not the case for everyone. And even if it is the case that you grew up talking and having conversations about money, that doesn't mean that those beliefs or the things that you learned have to be what you carry forward with you today. I firmly believe that we have a lot to learn from each other, and that we do that by telling our money stories and being willing to learn and grow in this process of building our own wealth together. Today, I have an investment portfolio that is right around $1 million. That's enabling me to have this financial flexibility, not complete freedom. I'm not retired, but the flexibility to make decisions about how I want to use my time and where I want to invest both my financial and my personal time and skill resources. That's what I'm excited to share with you today. But before we move on, I'd like to invite Sydney to share her money story. I've gotten to know her over the last year through the KSL. Hi everyone, I'm Sydney. I know a lot of you, but Michaela invited me to share my money story with y'all because it's probably a little bit closer to most of y'all's in the room, and we might find similarity in it. Michaela was my mentor through the Student Board Executive Committee Alumni Board Mentor Program that we had last year, and so throughout the whole year we talked a lot about money, and I got very clear on my goals and things that I wanted to do with my finances. Unlike Michaela though, my parents were not about money. They did not talk about investing, financing, anything like that. I know that they didn't invest, and so coming into college, I didn't really have a basis for anything related to finances. I was just always very good at saving my money, which isn't always the best thing, just have it sitting there. But since being in college, I've got really clear on what I want to do. Talking a lot to Michaela and doing a lot of my own research, I've started to slowly open up my financial journey. And so I have different things such as a retirement account, savings account, brokerage account, and then also credit cards to keep building my credit score. And so anybody can do all of these things at any time, and you could even invest $20. I'm not investing a lot of money. I'm literally like most months, $20, $50, but it's still growing in year over year. You can see a lot of growth. And so I'm excited for you all to hear from Michaela. Yes. Thank you. Let's do it, and let's start with a conversation. So please turn to your neighbor, be brave, and share your money story. This does not have to be anything profound, but think about what your first interaction with money was. What's your first memory? Do you even remember that far back? Probably not envelope budgeting, because y'all are not millennials like me. Thank you, side part. But tell the person next to you your earliest memories and the people who maybe influenced how you feel and think about money today. I'll give us about 2 minutes. Yourself, and maybe your neighbor, maybe a new friend. We will come back to having these conversations with your partner, the folks around you, as we get going on our work. But what we can expect for the next 20 or so minutes is that, first of all, we're going to address why are we talking about this? You know, money is often a very taboo subject, so why is it important to have this conversation together in this group? We're going to bust a couple of investment myths. Maybe these are top of mind, maybe you've never heard them before, but we're going to tackle them together. And then we're going to get to the good stuff about how do I get started? Because it's fine to know all of this information, but it doesn't do you any good if you don't put it into action. We're going to do that together by working through a couple of parts of this worksheet that you will be able to take home with you and continue to build on. Reminder to myself to tell you all that I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a tax accountant. We didn't learn this, even in our MBA. Right? We don't learn personal finance in school. These lessons that I am sharing with you are not just hard fought by myself learning either, but through a lot of research. And these are meant for educational purposes, not any kind of investment advice. We're not going to be saying, go buy these stocks. I'm not pushing that stuff today. But we are going to kick off with a little self-assessment. Do not panic. I'm not asking you to share this information. You don't even have to tell it to your neighbor, but just reflect for yourself personally and ask yourself, when I think about money, do I feel confident and empowered? I hope that you do. And if you don't, what words would you put into that blank? We just want to acknowledge those right now. What are we coming into this conversation with? Do you know what your total monthly expenses are? Do you know what you're saving on a monthly or annual basis? And if you are already investing, do you know what your investment rate is? I'm guessing the answer to the majority of those questions is, I don't even know. I don't even know where to start. And that's okay. That's what we're going to talk about today so that you have a solid foundation from which to build your investment portfolio going forward. If you do already know the answers to these questions, hell yeah, help your neighbors get on board as well. Okay, so why is this important? Got a couple of facts up here that I think are helpful context to set the stage, which is that as generations are aging, particularly the baby boomers, there's quite a bit of wealth that is being transitioned to rising generations. There's also the fact that statistically speaking, of course not in every case, but generally women outlive men. And so as the generations are aging and they're passing down wealth and women are living longer than their spouses, a lot of wealth in the nature of 3 to 9 trillion with a T dollars are coming women's way. That is a huge opportunity and, dare I say, responsibility to manage wisely. It's also a huge potential benefit for us to positively impact our communities and the world around us. We also tend to do really well when we invest. And I hope that you hear this from me today, because whether you have investment experience or not, I'm 35 years old, by the way. As I have these conversations with a lot of my colleagues and friends who went to grad school, friends who are doctors, friends who are doing amazing things in their career and earning a good amount of money, it's really resonating with them that they don't feel confident in how they're managing it. They might be doing some things, but like me, they were asking themselves, am I doing enough? Have I really invested my money, or is it sitting there not working for me? What I'm saying is a lot of women have told me over the last 2 years that they feel really insecure about making investment decisions. So if you feel that, you are not alone. There's a report that Fidelity has been doing specifically on female investors for the last number of years. I've fully read the ones from 2021 forward. And some really amazing things have come out of that. One of which is that, again, statistically, women outperform male investors by 40 basis points. Here's some jargon for you. That translates to 0.4%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but over time, that actually adds up to quite a big impact on your investment portfolio. And the main reason why this report attributes that difference is because when you trade a lot, buy and sell stocks, that volatility tends to have a negative effect on the money that you make. Men self-identify in this report as being highly knowledgeable and very aggressive when it comes to investing. Maybe as you're sitting here thinking, oh, we're talking about investing, that's not me, I'm not aggressive, I'm not really confident in what I'm doing here. Maybe those are thoughts that you're having. And if that's the case, maybe we can think about it differently and say, no, those attributes don't actually lead to a higher return. It is studied by Fidelity that taking a long-term point of view, and that generally women trade less in their portfolios than men, and they tend to outperform. So all of that to say that when we invest, we actually do a pretty damn good job. And I love sharing that because I think the more that you know, the more confident that you can be in learning as you go. And the last thing I want to highlight here, which is really a shout out to the rising generation, is that the number of female investors is increasing dramatically just over the last couple of years, since 2020, 2021. And some of that has to do with the technology that's making it easy for us to access and trade. That can be abused to the extent that we can get involved before we're really confident and knowledgeable about what we're doing. But I believe that overall that's really a great thing, and the younger generations are driving this increase from just year over year, 60% to 71% of women are invested in the stock market. So you're in good company, and there's a lot of room to grow. All right, time for some myth busting. Myth number one, it might feel like investing is too risky. I'm not interested in it, I'm gonna take the safe path. I've heard you can lose all your money in the stock market. I'm not interested in that. Let me stay in this lane. Investing, particularly in the stock market, although there are other things like real estate that you can invest in, certainly involves risk. But that risk can be managed through diversification, through long-term holding, and by making sure that you're not investing money that you need to live your daily life and your emergency savings on. So by being aware of the risk, we can manage it. Being unaware of the risk and afraid of it keeps us out of the game. You know what else is risky? Leaving your money in a savings account that doesn't grow. We've all heard of inflation. There's been a lot of talk about inflation this year in particular. That's the rising cost of goods. If you leave your money in your savings account, you are hindered by the rate of inflation outpacing the value of your money that's just sitting there, like in a pile. That's also a risk. So I have a lot of numbers on the screen. Let's actually dive into an example. But the message I want to take away from this risk is that you cannot Save your way to real wealth. So let's actually look at that, because my God, that was a lot of rates on the screen. Let's look at $1,000. This arbitrary number, easy to do the math. And we've got 3 different profile of investor here. Actually, I should say money manager, because they've made 3 different decisions about what they're going to do with this $1,000. On the left, we have hypothetical Angela. Angela has stuck her money in a traditional savings account. It's nice and safe. It's not going anywhere. Aditi has put hers into something called a high-yield savings account. Just by show of hands, I'm curious, has anyone even heard of a high-yield savings account before? Yes! Oh my God, y'all are amazing. I did not know that until like a couple of years ago, so that's awesome. And then Lexi invested her money, in this case I'm using an example of in the general stock market index, so as broad as you could get. Moving down this table, I want to walk through each line item here. So in your savings account in your bank, the bank uses your deposits in order to make loans to other people, and in exchange for that, they pay you a minuscule rate of return. That can be as low as 0.1% at the big banks, or up to about 0.45%, and it fluctuates based on what the interest rate is doing. So this year, the interest rates have been a little higher. It's on that 0.45%. Those look like tiny numbers, and sure enough, after 1 year, Angela is going to have made less than $5 on her $1,000. Maybe 10 cents. It's just a name. The very last line item here is what's so important, which is if we remember that our money isn't just existing in a silo, but it's up against what's up there in that right-hand corner, the rate of inflation. As cost of goods have risen, the current rate of inflation is around 2.4%. So if you actually apply that to the $1,000, it's lost value. Without looking at the exact numbers, we can understand the concept here that just keeping your money in the bank is exposing yourself to interest rate risk. It's not a lot, but it's important to be aware of. On the high yield savings account, I'm so happy to see the hands here. High yield savings accounts offer higher interest rates, usually because they are housed in online banks that don't have to pay the operating expenses of operating branches and everything that comes along with that. So they tend to offer a savings account is getting and think through what kind of impact that has. Compared to the traditional savings account, your $1,000 would make 40 to 50 in a year. That's pretty nice. It's not nothing. And lastly, if you invested, taking on an average stock market return of 8 to 10%, you would have potentially $100 by the end of the year. And again, factoring in inflation, you would net that out, but you can see the impact of these different rates of return. 8 to 10% on average for the stock market does not mean that every single year it's making 8 to 10%. Some years it goes down, and some years it goes way up. This year's return is like 24+%. So that's where the risk factor comes into play, and you need to be aware that it's not a guaranteed return, but if you are thinking about keeping your money there for the long term, it's beneficial. So on that note, let's talk about time. Myth number 2 might be, this is all well and good, but I'm in college, I don't need to be investing my money yet. That may be true, but make sure that you hear the impact that time has on your investment return. Long time horizons, so starting sooner rather than later, enable your investments to withstand the ups and downs of the market versus trying to get in and out very quickly and being subject to, oh shoot, maybe this is one of those years where it's not up 24%. So what does that look like? We've got new profiles. Sabrina and, oh darn, I kept the name of GT, I didn't mean to do that. We get the idea here though. I knocked down our annual return to 7% to take into consideration the net effect after inflation. And now we're looking at taking that $1,000 into an investment account. But Sabrina is 25, and our IDP number 2 waited until she was my age. Hear me when I say this. It is never too late to start investing, but the sooner you do it, the better. Look at the difference. If they just put that $1,000 investment in and never add to it again, by the time she retires, which is hypothetically 40 years from now at age 65, for Sabrina, she'd have over 200 grand just from that $1,000 investment. Whereas DT, waiting 10 years, has half of that. Right? These are hypothetical illustrative examples. There's a lot of factors that come into play here, but the impact of time on compounding interest, or the return that you get on top of a return, has a very meaningful impact on your generation of wealth. So, if we want to start sooner rather than later, what do we need to make sure that we have before we start investing? Notice this has nothing to do with age, but you want to make sure that you're spending less than you earn. Seems pretty straightforward, but knowing that monthly expense number is very important to make sure that you are putting money into your investment portfolio that you don't need to live off of. Second, you want to pay down debt. I know I'm talking to a room full of college students, and student loans are very real. That's not the kind of debt that I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is high interest debt. So like a credit card that maybe has a 30% interest rate. If you use your credit card on a regular basis and then you pay it off on a regular basis, awesome. If you use your credit card and then you carry a balance, it really adds up, and that kind of debt can be really crushing. So we want to make sure that we have managed any high interest debt and we're able to pay that off on a regular basis before we start investing otherwise. And last but not least, you want to pay yourself first. I love this phrase, and I repeat it to myself on a regular basis. Whenever I'm thinking about buying something, or let's face it, investing in an Eras ticket, I ask myself, have I paid myself first? Meaning, have I saved? Have I put the money into my long-term account? If yes, then great. I can use this leftover cash for discretionary purchases. Last but not least, or myth number 3 is, this is all well and good, but I don't have enough money to start investing. The reality is it doesn't take a lot. As Sydney mentioned earlier, a small investment on a regular basis over time can really add up. The analogy that's used a lot here is like the growth of a snowball pushed downhill. You start with something small and it really grows on top of itself over time. So again, if we look at investing just $20 a month, right? I'm covering my living expenses, I'm making sure that my credit card debt has been paid down, and I've got $20 a month. I can be investing that into a portfolio that in 40 years from now, that $20 a month is $50,000. Now, not enough to retire on, but these are good habits to start building. And I want us all to remember, as closing here, this is possibly my favorite quote of all time by Sally Krawcheck, the CEO of Ellevest, who was one of the only female CEOs of a big bank before she started Ellevest. Nothing bad happens when women have more money. Right? So with that, how do we get started? What we're talking about here is making sure that we cultivate a healthy money mindset to begin. Because if we don't understand our own thoughts and feelings towards the money that we're looking to make decisions with, we're not going to be on very solid footing. Second, we want to make sure that we establish that solid financial foundation, easy for me to say, by knowing where our money is going every month, paying down our high interest debt, and paying ourselves first. We want to create a financial plan. This is something that I hope everyone has, and today maybe feels a little less scary. by actually getting started on it together. It doesn't have to be big and complicated, and you don't have to wait to work with a financial advisor. Your money plan is literally, this is what money means to me, and this is how I want to use it, and how I'm going to go about using it. Learn as you go. This is not about having all the information. There's no study, take the exam, like check, yep, I know everything that I need to know about investing. I work with a lot of professional women today who work in the wealth management industry, and they even still feel hesitant on their personal finances. It's not about knowing everything there is to know about investing. It's about knowing your numbers, educating yourself on the risk, and taking an educated step forward and learning as you go. At some point, you have to just pull the trigger and track progress so that you can see your growth, like Sydney said, measure it over month, year over year, and really see the difference that you're making in your own financial future. So with that, I would love to transition to our workbook. How are we doing on time? Yeah? Amazing, okay. So I broke this out into 3 working parts, and then your action items, and lastly, a whole bunch of resources that we'll be sure to include in the digital version of this so y'all can keep doing your homework. But I'd like us to start with the first part in building our money mindset. This is going to be some of your own personal reflection about your values and what money means to you. Take a few minutes to think this over, talk with the folks next to you. I'll give us about 5 minutes, and then we'll talk about part number 2. Okay. So hopefully this reflection is just a good grounding for how we think about money today, the influences that have affected how we think about money today, and then envisioning going forward. Before we move on to the tactical part 2, I want to share what my experience has been again at age 35, which I'm finding is resonating quite a bit with a lot of my peers. Knowing that y'all are not 35 and can perhaps learn from our experiences and chart a different path, build your wealth even sooner than we did, I would love for that to be a takeaway. When I was 30, I was fortunate to be able to invest in real estate. I bought a home, I had gone to grad school, I was paying off my student loans, and had a good car, and I looked around and thought, what else? I'm putting money away into my retirement account. I just spoke to someone about Roth. I was in a pretty good position financially, and wondering what else should I be doing? I was building up cash in this investment portfolio, and yet didn't feel all that confident that my money was doing everything that it could be doing for me. So I started looking around. I started doing research, I started talking to financial advisors, I called my broker advisor and started asking questions like, what else should I be doing? I'm hungry, I'm pretty confident that if I put my mind to this, I can make it grow even more for myself. And the first question out of most financial advisors' mouth is, well, what age do you want to retire? And how much money do you want to have when you retire? And my response to which was, I'd love to retire tomorrow with a lot. Like, I don't know what else you want from me. Like, these questions seem so out of touch with what I was looking for. And it took me a while and a lot of conversations with many other friends, family, women, to realize that there was no external answer to that question. Yes, there are strategies that you can learn to use, but what I was really looking for stemmed from this page. What was the vision for my life? Why did I want to grow this wealth? You know, even as I was asking those questions and looking for more, I still felt a little bit of shame around money and thinking, was this coming from a place of feeling not worthy of it? or a place of self-sacrifice, that my career really needed to be about impact and not money. We have these like stories that society tells us, especially women. And over the past couple of years, I have really transformed the way that I think about money, from that place of uncertainty to realizing the money isn't bad. It's not inherently bad. It's what you do with it that really matters. What you do with it for yourself and your own life and for the community that you live in, it's literally a tool to live the life that you envision for yourself. Whether that means becoming a homeowner, whether that means traveling the globe when you graduate, whether it means having a family, or giving yourself options to invest in making a really big health decision for yourself, like freezing your eggs. That's something that I was able to work towards and pull the trigger on because I had financially saved towards a goal that was really meaningful for the life that I want to live. So I share that with you today to highlight my mindset, even as someone who's very passionate about the subject, and with the hope that this vision page stays with you metaphorically, and you continue to revisit it, and you continue to see money as a tool to help you build that life that you envision for yourself, because you are worthy of it. So now that you have your goals, let's get tactical. Wow, that came up as a really big page. I'm not sure why I did that, but we get the idea. Okay, so part 2 here is something that you may or may not be able to fill out right now. As a student, you may not have income. Totally understandable. This is not about completeness, but about creating the mindset and the healthy habits around building your solid financial foundation, which starts with knowing what is coming in the top. So this part, for all of my business mindset folks out here, is just like a company. You're thinking of yourself as your own business. What's coming in, what are you spending it on, and what's left over. Working through this very simple worksheet, keeping track of your sources of income, keeping track of your monthly expenses is very important so that we know where that credit card bill comes from every month. And it's good to break down your expenses by both fixed, things that aren't going to change overnight, and things that you could adjust. My coffee budget is definitely one that I pay attention to in my variable expense category, because when I need to crank things down a little bit, that is the first one that I affect. And that is not to say that it's not worth going to spend money on your coffee, by all means. For me personally, I just know that that one can get pretty high, so it's a good one for me to track. And then, most importantly, after we identify those things, I want to take a second to reflect on where the money is going. Are those expenses actually aligned with that goal and vision that you outlined earlier? Or is there something that you're like, damn, I'm really spending a lot on going to concerts, but I actually really don't like staying out or going out at 10 p.m. I'm really aging myself. I would much rather invest in a trip that I'm planning over the holidays. I don't know, that may not resonate at all. But take a minute, think through your own expenses, maybe chat about this, right? You don't have to state the number, but chat about the categories that you're filling in here for your monthly expenses with your neighbor, and then reflect and see if that's in line with core values. Obviously. What's spelled out here is getting to your emergency fund rate. So this dollar amount is really good to make sure that you've got it covered just in case any emergencies arise down the road. That could mean unexpectedly unemployed, or it could mean taking a chance on a new business opportunity. So having that nest egg is really helpful, and calculating it this way, just multiplying your monthly expenses times 3 to 6 is a really simple way to calculate it. Okay, back at the beginning, I asked if anybody knew their savings and their investing rates. This is where you can figure it out. So once we've gone through the practice of identifying how much we're spending, hopefully, once we start earning some income, there will be a positive difference between the money that's coming in and the money that's going out. We want to make sure that we think about paying ourselves first, like an expense. So in my mind, it's rent, health insurance, utilities, the must-haves, and it's my savings, right? I don't sacrifice that for my discretionary spending. I make sure that after my essentials are met, that I'm putting money away into my savings account that I can then use to invest. So knowing your savings rate based on your monthly income is a really good number and a healthy one to keep track of and make sure that as your income grows, the rate may not change, but the dollar amount that you put into your savings account should go up as your income grows. That's always a good thing. Same concept for your investment contribution. These are just good key metrics to keep track of. Part 3, we're not going to go into today because, big components of your net worth calculation are like owning a home. So keep this in mind. Net worth is one of those metrics that's a good one to start tracking when you're there. And last but not least, keeping your dashboard, right? You are the corporation here. You are building your wealth for the life that you envision. Having these numbers top of mind doesn't mean that you're looking at this every day. I was just sharing that I don't even look at my stock portfolio every single day. Would stress me out. But I do make sure that I keep these numbers up to date and I reflect on them at least quarterly so that I can make any adjustments that I might need to keep myself on track for those goals that I've set. I hope this was helpful today. I hope you're walking out with some action items. There's a ton of resources here we'll send out digitally as well, but thank you so much for your engagement tonight and have a great evening.